Anyway, let's move on to the next agenda. We want to get a pool update from Gary Grante and the pool contract.
Okay. We had a pending issue last time in May, and that was whether we were code compliant with our diving board for diving during open swim. I confirmed that with an honest to God measurement right in the pool today, and it does match up to the blueprints that I have, which shows that we are code compliant. I'll follow that up with Mark Boda, which is the inspector from the health department, and have our records corrected in their files, because that's where the error is.
Did you change the 1 to 2?
I want his approval before I cannot do that. The second thing was you guys gave me permission to get rid of our CPO last week, and since then, you guys wanted to grab. Our chemical levels have now leveled off since he left, and that's what was going on beforehand. So, for the sake of all your swimmers, I appreciate that. So, John wanted that.
We still heat the pool when it's 300 degrees
No.
outside?
As far as the new contractors, that's what we were talking about, whether we had enough with these guys, and I certainly do think we have. I broke it down to weeks to make it more sense. In other words, how much it's going to cost per week. The new company gave us a price of about $1,500. I mean, $15,000 a week to operate the pool. What we were paying the other company was $11,500. So is it a little more? Yes, but it's probably more realistic. I do believe that the original contract was underbid from the get-go, which is why they're having so much trouble as it was. So you'd have to consider whether you want to pay the difference. I do believe this company could give us what we asked for, and they seem enthusiastic enough to try to make it happen. Just to give you a little update, if we, at this point, it would be 5.5 weeks. If we do this on August 1st, in other words, go to a new company and break loose with the other company, that would be 5.5 weeks left for the season. It's a 14-week season, so the difference was 8.5 prior to that. Under the old contract, that would mean that we should have paid them approximately $97,000. From what I've found out, I think we paid them $120,000 at this point. So that would do us $22,000 refund from that contract. Besides the lost services, in other words, services that they were supposed to supply that didn't supply, well, I don't know how you want to handle that. If you want to pursue it, you certainly can. I can supply most of that data and back it up. And considering I wasn't here all the time, spotty as far as my role in the pool, I can verify most of it. So that's the difference between the two companies. If you want us to keep the chemicals in-house, I didn't price that in this. I assumed that you want to keep that going, and we can do that for the rest of the season, myself and Frank, which is our in-house staff, and we maintain that.
So that's it. If you do the chemicals for the rest of the season, does it save us any money with the new company?
Yes, because you wouldn't be going for the CPO, which was costing you $1,500 a week. If Frank and I are doing it basically on our existing time here during the week on our existing shift, and that would only require us to come in 1 to 2 hours each day on the weekend. So would it cost you something? Yes, maybe $200-$300 versus the $1,500 for the outside. That's up to you. I talked to Frank, we would cover it for the last 5 weeks if you wanted. Do you have any other questions?
What facilities is the new company handling that?
You know, I don't have a good record, and I'm going to check that out. I didn't have time. We only met 2 days ago. So I want to know if they could actually do the function, whether they could supply the manpower. The reason why they have the manpower available is because a pool that they're handling down, they had a problem. It's an indoor pool, and the ceiling's falling down, and the city's making them close the pool for the season. That's how we're...
Sorry, Gary.
Yeah.
Can I ask what your name was and what the question? I didn't even hear your question to Gary.
I'm Michael Brennan, and my question was, what facilities is the new company that he's recommending, who are they handling?
Thank you.
And I haven't done that research. If you'd like me to do that, I have no problem doing that. But since it was just 2 days, I have
If you just step back, so have we gone through contract with a new pool company?
We have a proposal. We have a couple of things we would have to do to get out of the existing contract, which we need to probably do an executive session, because there are some issues there of legality that we need to talk about. There's a process involved in each. So I think that, you know, if that's the commission's wish, it can be done. We have a proposal in place and a willing vendor. We can talk about that as well. So there is an option if you want to change that contract.
Extinguishing type.
I'm not really that familiar with the pool because I've never been a pool member, but Gary, you used to do what you're now doing again and then were pulled off? Is that correct? Okay, and the reason for that was because, what's the reason that he had this job and everything was fine with the water, from what I understand, right? And then we hired an outside company to do it, and then we had all these problems with the water and staffing and whatnot. So why did we outsource it? What was the reason for that? And whose decision was that?
Gary's our facilities person, he's not just our pool person. And if you notice, we have a huge backlog of facilities problems that needed to be addressed. So one of our primary concerns in trying to get the snack bar operating, the kitchen operating, was we have 2 people on staff, Gary and Frank, that's it. The pool's a full-time job plus. We allocate about $20,000 a year in overtime to make sure that they're in here on weekends, on extra time, on holidays, on double time. So we thought that overall we needed their expertise managing the facility and trying to bring in a professional to manage the pool. That was a decision that was made. The CPO that was brought in didn't work out. We still have the backlog of facilities issues. We still have the same problems, but we're going to focus more of Gary and Frank's energies in the next 5 weeks on the pool. In other areas that we are having problems, like the air conditioning broken in this building, we have controllers that still haven't been replaced in the kiddie pool. Things that normally they can get to, they won't be able to get to because their time is spent. The pool is a full-time job.
I just want to go back to the pool a little bit, because I spent some time down at the pool over the last couple of weeks with, when I was down there, one of the guys from American Legion, the vice president was there. I had a conversation with him, this is not crazy stuff. Francesca I spoke to, and I understand after the CPO was let go, just a couple of days later the head lifeguard didn't get quit or was fired. So there was a day when Gary had to, maybe it was his first day on, he had to shut half the pool down till you get the staff and this and that and blah, blah, blah. I just want to know for myself, and maybe Art's the best person or Gary to answer this. Francesca told me 7 lifeguards plus a head lifeguard was optimum for running that pool. Is that the number that my kids need to be safe in that pool? Because she said 4 in the big, 1 in the little, 1 on first aid, and then a manager.
I disagree.
Okay, so I'd like to know your guys' thought on that.
Well, let me give you scenarios, Leon. You got 1 lifeguard on the diving board. You got 2 diving boards. Okay. With 7 guards, you got 1 in the lap lanes, 2 in the shallow, and 1 in the baby pool, and 1 in first aid. That's all your guards. You got 200 people in the pool because it's 95 degrees. Kid hits his head on the diving board, he's unconscious, and he's sinking in 13 feet of water. Okay? What is that guard going to do? That company right now has no way for him to tell the other guards what he needs to do. And if he needs to do it, he's going to need help. And there's no way he can have help because everybody else has a function at that point. So no, 7 guards is not safe for that pool, in my opinion.
And which brings me to my next question is, how many did we contract for from that company?
I believe they were supposed to have a floater, so that there was always somebody who could respond and assist another guard in an emergency. I've never seen a floater walking around. They've said that, well, that's the head guard. Well, okay, there's supposed to be a head guard and a floater. So, which is it? I've never seen them, in my opinion, when I've been pooling, it's not as much as I wish this year, where they've had what they said was going to be in the contract.
And then, it seems like they weren't delivering services, perhaps. There could be a question that I assume in executive session or whatever is going on. But I'm curious, and if you guys are trying to manage it, if we could somehow have any liability in this relationship. I know there's always 2 sides to a story, and I hope that I'm sure we're considering that. And a long time ago, before we hired anybody, I had asked who was, managing the pool. And I believe at that point, Jim had been, just focusing on just the casting, and Gary had been not in the picture. So, this contract got put together at some point, so, hopefully this new company we're talking to, I guess the question is, are they one of the first companies that bid on this?
They are. They were the second place bid.
Okay. So, I guess, they didn't come in first the first time, so hopefully we're being really cautious with this and that if we do whatever you guys do, that we've got, somebody good in place.
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously going to proceed with caution. Originally, we wanted to have our own CPO pool manager on site. I don't know what we're going to discuss in executive session. I know there were some meetings today with American Leisure. I think we need in that new contract specific language that says, Gary can tell them, okay, this is not right, you need to do this, this, and this. Okay? He has to have some authority, and this has been a problem ever since we went to the contract companies back in 2006, that they've basically thumbed their noses at us. If they don't want to do what we tell them to do, they're like, well, we don't work for you. We're a contract company, talk to our boss. If they tell us, then we'll do it. Well, that's not effective. So I'm hoping that whatever we do proceed with, somehow we can have authority over them, at least to tell them what they need to do.
And then how feasible, and I know nothing about pools, is it for us to put that system in place sometime in the near future? We don't have to hire a company and we can do it ourselves.
I mean, I don't know what it was, February or March, I sat up here and was the lone voice. There was a lot of people in the audience, some backed me up, some didn't. I felt that we should have a pool manager or pool director, okay, who hires the guards, makes sure they're trained, makes sure they're certified, schedules them, just like I did back in 2005. Is it as cost effective? I don't know. I mean, I've never been able to see the numbers because the numbers aren't retrievable from when I ran the pool. I can tell you this, when I was hired, I asked for a budget in 2005. I was told by Scott why. No budget, you staff the pool the way you want to make it safe. So I did, and I had a lot of guards. I think I had 20 on staff. Now, were they there every day? No, but I had 2 staffs. So if an emergency happened, I have a whole staff to respond to an emergency, and the pool can continue to function. Which for me is how I think should be safe, which was what I was asked to do. I was brought up here with Gary, and I don't blame Gary for this, I know what Scott's doing. He sat me down, bought me dinner or lunch, and when at the end of lunch he said, "You spent too much money." What do you say to that? I had a bad taste in my mouth the rest of the season, didn't want the job anymore.
You should have said you steal too much money.
That's
Are you familiar with the company for last year's contracts?
I am.
So I looked at that one versus the one of the company we hired this year, and, you know, the schedules look similar, but we had 19, 17, 13 lifeguards. If you added the managers, we said like 19. Did we actually pay for all those people, or, and because this year we had 7, right? Or what? So we went,
It was a bare bone staffing, and it was, you know, we've had a very strong backlash after what occurred here. People were watching numbers, and unfortunately that's been too much of the focus, even for Jim. I mean, it's all about, oh my God, are you making money? Yes, we saw a decrease in what we spent for the pool management, and it was considered attractive, that's what they went for. Personally, I don't think that's the way to go.
the last thing I would say is, and of course it's in hindsight, it's money more quarterbacking, but know that it's the kids over there, so, you know, we want to have a nice junior golf program. I think, you know, we want to make sure we have the pool adequately staffed, and if there's one place we got to spend, make sure we're spending enough money, you know, the safety of the kids probably.
You know, it goes along, and this is why I feel for Jim tonight. It's exactly the same thing. Yes, we subsidize the swim team, but let's look at how many out-of-town members come here because they want their kids swimming for Rye Golf, Division I team in the conference. They're successful year after year, and if you put a revenue stream towards that, yet we're not subsidizing. That's an attractive thing that people come here for. And you know what? Last week with the heat wave, I mean, that's as busy as I've seen the pool in 10 years. We need to keep them safe, or we're going to really screw ourselves up.
So if the number he said was 7 and you said it's insufficient, what is the number that would make it safe? Is it 8, is it 9, is it 10?
Gary, what do you?
You know, and this may be why they felt I spent too much money. Personally, I would like to have 12 guards here at any given time.
So that's a huge increase.
You know, you could go a little shorter, maybe 10 to 11:30 to 12, maybe a little shorter, 6:30 to 8. But you need to have 2 distinct staffs. So that first of all, they can get out of that 90-degree heat and not have to have their boss come hand them ice creams on their chairs, which shouldn't be done. And so if there is a significant event, and God knows, thank God, we haven't had one, it can be addressed properly, and we don't look like fools in a civil court afterwards.
So when you did this years ago, you had 10 to 12 people all the time?
Pretty much, yeah.
Gary, what do you do?
That's true. We were restricted. We were told that you're spending too much money, can't have it, gotta do more with less. And that's bare bones minimum to what we got down to. We have to meet code, so we have to have 4 guards in that pool to open the big pool entirely, that's code. So there's certain points you can't go below, and that's about minimum. That contract did reflect that one floater for that purpose, to help them give.
Right, wasn't there.
But no, they weren't there, and then that company contended that's not enough anyway, we need more breaks, more breaks. Hey, I think, at that point, to sign a contract, what
Do you think 10,
They need-
10 is a good number, like, what do you think?
No, I do think that area is a good number, 10, 11 people.
Well, they had
Because you
seven.
need one or two.